I still remember the weightless feeling of joy when Mark handed me the envelope at our kitchen table. Inside were 2 first-class tickets to Paris, a surprise for our 10th anniversary. "You always said you wanted to see the Eiffel Tower sparkle at night," he whispered, his fingers gently squeezing mine across the table. 10 years of marriage, 3 relocations for his career, and raising our daughter together had left little time for romance. But this gesture made me feel like the girl he'd proposed to again. Valued, cherished, seen. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The Paris trip was perfectly timed. Mark's law firm had just closed a massive case. Our daughter Lily was spending the week with my parents, and I'd finally submitted my master's thesis after 2 years of late nights. We needed this space to reconnect, to remember who we were, beneath the layers of responsibility we'd accumulated. Paris welcomed us with unseasonably warm April sunshine. Our hotel room overlooked a charming street lined with cafes where couples sat close together, talking in hushed tones over espresso. Mark insisted we follow his meticulously planned itinerary: the Louvre in the morning, lunch at a little bistro he'd researched, the Seine River cruise at sunset. I teased him about his rigid planning, but secretly, I loved that he'd put so much thought into every detail. "Tonight's dinner is special," he said as we returned to our hotel to change. "Wear that black dress I love." His eyes lingered on me with an intensity I hadn't seen in months. Something fluttered in my chest. Hope, excitement, desire, feelings that had been dormant in the daily routine of our marriage. The restaurant was everything a romantic Paris dinner should be. Soft lighting, intimate tables, waiters who moved like shadows. Mark ordered champagne, toasting to 10 years and forevermore. His phone buzzed twice during appetizers, and each time he glanced at it briefly before returning it to his pocket with a tightness around his mouth I couldn't quite read. "Everything." "Okay?" I asked after the second message. "Just work," he said, smiling too quickly. "I told them not to bother me, but you know how it is." He reached for my hand across the table. "Tonight is just for us." I believed him then. Why wouldn't I? Mark had always been dedicated to his cases, often working weekends and late nights. This trip was his way of making up for those absences. At least, that's what I thought. After dinner, we walked along the Seine, my arm linked through his, my head occasionally resting against his shoulder. The Eiffel Tower sparkled on the hour, just as he'd promised, and he pulled me close for a kiss as thousands of lights danced across the dark water. "I love you, Claire," he whispered against my hair. "I'm sorry I've been so distracted lately." "It's okay," I said, because it was. Standing there with the cool Paris night around us, everything felt right again. We're here now. Back at the hotel, Mark took a shower while I kicked off my heels and poured myself a glass of water. My feet ached pleasantly from walking all day, and the rich French food and wine had left me feeling languid and satisfied. I curled up in the plush armchair by the window, watching the street below come alive with nightlife. That's when I heard it, the distinctive buzz of a phone. Not mine, which was charging on the nightstand. Not Mark's usual phone, which he'd left on the dresser. This came from his suitcase, half hidden under the bed. I stared at the suitcase for a long moment, telling myself to ignore it. Whatever business, call or text was coming through could wait until morning. But the phone buzzed again, insistent, and before I could talk myself out of it, I was kneeling beside the suitcase, unzipping the side pocket where the sound originated. A sleek, black phone I'd never seen before rested there, its screen illuminated with a message preview. "Did you tell her yet? We need to move forward with the plan. Time's running out." The sender was saved simply as J. The bathroom door opened in a burst of steam, and I quickly shoved the phone back into the pocket, my heart hammering against my ribs. Mark emerged. With a towel around his waist, his hair damp and tousled, looking so much like the man I'd fallen in love with that for a second, I almost convinced myself I'd imagined the message. "You okay?" he asked, noticing me kneeling by the suitcase. "Looking for something?" My throat closed around the truth. "Just my moisturizer," I managed, pulling out the first small bag my fingers touched. As Mark dressed for bed, humming softly to himself, I watched him with new eyes. Who was Jay? What plan were they talking about? And why did my husband, who shared everything with me, have a secret phone hidden in his suitcase in Paris? I slipped into bed beside him, keeping to my side as my mind raced through possibilities, each more devastating than the last. Mark reached for me in the darkness, his hands finding my waist with familiar ease. "Today was perfect," he murmured, pulling me against him. "Just like I planned." I closed my eyes, breathing in his clean scent, feeling the solid warmth of his body against mine. My husband, my partner, a stranger with secrets. "Yes," I whispered back. "Perfect." But as I lay awake long after he'd fallen asleep, listening to the distant sounds of Paris nightlife floating through our open window, I knew that tomorrow I would have to find that phone again. I needed to know what plan my husband was hiding, and what it meant for our marriage, our future, and the love I thought we shared. And sleep never came that night. I watched dawn break over the Paris rooftops, the early light painting the zinc tiles in shades of pearl and rose while Mark slept soundly beside me. How could he sleep so peacefully with such secrets between us? When his breathing changed and I knew he was waking, I closed my eyes, feigning sleep. His fingers brushed my hair back, his lips pressed against my temple, a gesture so tender it made my chest ache. Was it possible to love someone and lie to them simultaneously? "I know you're awake," he whispered, his breath warm against my ear. "Your eyebrows scrunch when you're pretending." I opened my eyes, forcing a smile. "Morning. What's on the perfectly planned itinerary today?" "Sacré-Cœur and Montmartre. Artists. Cobblestones, the best view of the city." His thumb traced my cheekbone. "You seem tense. Bad dreams?" The concern in his eyes seemed genuine. That was the thing about Mark. Even now, with suspicion churning in my stomach, I couldn't detect falseness in him. He'd always been my rock, my certainty. Until that message from Jay. Just jet lag, I lied, becoming what I feared he was, a person who kept secrets. In the shower, with hot water streaming down my face, I made a decision. I wouldn't confront him blindly. I needed facts, not fears. Whatever plan existed between Mark and this mysterious Jay, I would uncover it methodically, like the research papers I crafted for my thesis. Emotions would only cloud my judgment. Mark left to get coffee from the cafe downstairs, a ritual he'd established on day one, returning with perfectly flaky pain au chocolat and cappuccino for me. The moment the door clicked shut, I dove for his suitcase. The black phone was sleek, expensive, and locked. I tried his usual password, Lily's birthday, but the screen flashed red. Of course he wouldn't use the same code. This phone wasn't meant for me to find. I heard the keycard in the door and hastily shoved the phone back, snatching up my hairbrush just as Mark entered with our breakfast. "They were out of pain au chocolat, so I got you almond instead," he said, placing the coffee and pastry on the small table by the window. The Parisian morning light caught his profile, highlighting the silver threads now appearing at his temples. 10 years of marriage etched in silver. "Perfect," I said, the word sticking in my throat like a shard of glass. Montmartre was a maze of narrow streets climbing toward the gleaming white dome of Sacré-Cœur. Artists set up easels in the square, capturing tourists in quick charcoal sketches. Street musicians played melancholy accordion melodies that seemed to echo my inner turmoil. "Remember our honeymoon?" Mark took my hand as we climbed the steep steps toward the basilica. That tiny pension in Florence with the broken air conditioning? I did remember. The heat had been unbearable, but we'd laughed about it, making love, with the windows open despite the noise from the street below, drinking cheap wine on our little balcony at midnight. We were so young, I said, and something in my voice must have caught his attention because he stopped, turning to face me on the crowded steps. Claire? What's wrong? For a moment, I almost told him. The words rose in my throat. I found your other phone. Who is Jay? What plan are you hiding? But the sea of tourists flowed around us, and his phone, his regular phone, buzzed in his pocket. He glanced at it, that same tightness returning to his mouth. Work again? I asked, unable to keep the edge from my voice. Just an email confirmation. He showed me the screen, and sure enough, it displayed a reservation for dinner that night. Surprise ruined, he said with a small smile. I felt ashamed of my suspicion, yet the memory of that message lingered. Time's running out. What deadline were they facing? Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Inside the basilica, tourists whispered in hushed reverence while cameras flashed despite the prohibition signs. Mark guided me to a quiet corner where candles flickered in red glass holders, flames dancing like my scattered thoughts. Make a wish, he said, handing me a small coin for the donation box. I closed my eyes, the warmth of the candles on my face, and wished for the truth, whatever it might be. As we exited into the harsh sunlight, Mark's regular phone rang. He glanced at the screen, hesitated, then answered, stepping away from me. Yes, I understand. No, not yet. It's complicated, he said in the measured tone he used for difficult clients. I need more time. My pulse quickened. More time for what? When he returned, his expression was neutral, but his shoulders rigid with tension. Just the office. Henderson case complications. On our anniversary trip? I kept my voice light, masking the hurt. I'm sorry. I told them emergency calls only. He squeezed my hand. Let's not let it ruin our day. We spent the afternoon wandering through Montmartre's winding streets, browsing small galleries and vintage shops. Mark bought me a delicate watercolor of the Seine at sunset, haggling good-naturedly with the artist in his rusty college French. These moments of normalcy were disorienting. How could he be both this attentive husband and someone with secret plans and hidden phones? Late afternoon, he suggested we return to the hotel to rest before dinner. The restaurant is quite special. You'll want to be refreshed, he said with that hint of secretive pleasure he always had when planning surprises. My opportunity came when he stepped into the bathroom. I eased the black phone from his suitcase and tried another password. Our anniversary date. The screen unlocked. My fingers trembled as I opened the messaging app. The conversation with Jay was at the top. Jay, did you tell her yet? We need to move forward with the plan. Time's running out. Mark, not yet. Waiting for the right moment. Paris needs to be perfect first. Jay, you're overthinking this. She deserves to know everything. Mark, I'll tell her tomorrow night, I promise. Everything is arranged. Tomorrow night. My heart hammered against my ribs. What bombshell was he planning to drop? Divorce? An affair? Financial ruin? I scrolled further, finding photos exchanged between them, but they weren't intimate pictures or evidence of betrayal. They were images of a stone house with blue shutters surrounded by what looked like vineyards, interior shots of renovated rooms, and documents in French that I couldn't decipher. The bathroom door handle turned. I quickly closed the messages and returned the phone, my mind racing to process what I'd seen. The shower started running, giving me more time. A house in France? Was Mark planning to leave his law practice, move us overseas? That didn't make sense. He loved his work, and Lily was settled in her school. Unless the house wasn't for us. Unless Jay was someone he planned a new life with, away from me. The thought struck like a physical blow, leaving me breathless. I sank onto the bed, staring blindly at the elegant Parisian wallpaper, tracing its pattern as if it might reveal answers. When Mark emerged, wrapped in the hotel's plush robe, I had composed myself enough to smile. "Good shower?" "The pressure's amazing," he said, running a hand through his damp hair. "You should try it before we head out." I nodded, gathering my things, desperate for space to think. Under the hot spray, I let tears finally come, silent and hidden by the water. Whatever Mark planned to tell me tomorrow night would change everything. I was certain of that now. The question was, did I wait for his revelation or confront him with what I knew? As I dressed for dinner, applying makeup to hide my reddened eyes, another realization hit me. The message had said, "She deserves to know everything." Not, "She deserves to know," or "She needs to be told." Everything. As if there were multiple secrets, not just one. My husband of 10 years, the father of my child, had constructed an entire hidden life. And tomorrow night in Paris, that life would collide with the one we'd built together. I fastened the clasp on the necklace he'd given me for our 5th anniversary, watching my reflection in the mirror. The woman staring back looked calm, poised, even. Only I could see the fracture lines spreading beneath the surface, threatening to shatter everything I thought I knew about my marriage. The restaurant Mark had chosen overlooked the Seine, its terraced gardens strung with fairy lights that mirrored the stars appearing in the twilight sky. In another circumstance, I would have been enchanted. Now, every romantic gesture felt like a weight pressing against my chest, making it difficult to breathe. "You look beautiful," Mark said as the maitre d' led us to a secluded corner table. His gaze lingered on me with such genuine admiration that my resolve wavered. Could I have misinterpreted everything? "Thank you." I smoothed the silk of my dress, a midnight blue number I'd bought especially for Paris. "This place is extraordinary. Only the best for you." He reached across the table, his fingers brushing mine. 10 years, Claire. Sometimes I can't believe how lucky I am." His words lodged like splinters under my skin. If he felt so lucky, why the secret phone? Why the cryptic messages with Jay? Why the house with blue shutters hidden from me? The waiter arrived with champagne I hadn't seen Mark order, pouring 2 flutes of pale gold liquid that caught the candlelight. Mark raised his glass. "To us," he said. "To everything we've been through and everything still to come." The ambiguity of his toast wasn't lost on me. Everything still to come. Did that include whatever revelation he planned for tomorrow night? I sipped the champagne, letting the fine bubbles dissolve on my tongue, buying myself time to regain composure. "Mark, can I ask you something?" A flicker of, was it anxiety, crossed his face before his expression settled into attentive concern. "Of course, anything." "Are you happy? With our life, I mean." He seemed taken aback, setting down his glass carefully. "What brought this on?" "Just being here, in Paris. It makes you think about life choices, paths taken and not taken." I traced the rim of my glass. "If you could change anything about our life together, would you?" His eyes held mine, searching. "There are always things I wish I'd done differently. Working less. Being more present." He paused, something shifting in his expression. "But changing our life together? No. Though I do think about what comes next for us." "What comes next?" I repeated softly. "Like what?" The waiter returned with our appetizers, an artful arrangement of foie gras for Mark and escargot for me. Mark waited until we were alone again, before continuing. "Like whether we're challenging ourselves enough, taking enough risks." He hesitated. I've been thinking about this a lot lately. My heart rate accelerated. Was this the preamble to tomorrow's revelation? What kind of risks? Before he could answer, his regular phone buzzed. He glanced at it, frowning. Sorry, I should check this. Henderson again. As he read the message, I noticed a muscle twitching in his jaw, a telltale sign of stress I'd learned to recognize over our years together. Whatever that message contained, it wasn't good news. Problem? I asked when he set the phone down. Nothing. That can't wait until we're back home. His smile returned, but it didn't reach his eyes. Where were we? Taking risks, I prompted. Right. He took a breath as if steeling himself. Claire, I've been thinking that maybe it's time for... His secret phone rang. The sound was muffled by his jacket, but unmistakable. Mark froze. Fork. Suspended midair. I stared at him, caught between vindication at having proof I hadn't imagined the second phone and dread at what this interruption meant. Aren't you going to answer that? I asked, my voice deadly quiet. Mark slowly set down his fork. Claire. Your other phone. The one you keep hidden. Someone named Jay is calling you. The color drained from his face. How do you... I found it. Last night, while you were in the shower. No point hiding that now. I saw the messages, too. About the plan. About telling me everything. He closed his eyes briefly, his shoulders sagging. When he looked at me again, there was resignation in his gaze, but also, surprisingly, relief. I was going to tell you tomorrow night. Everything. Tell me now. My voice didn't sound like my own. Too steady, too controlled for the emotional hurricane inside me. Mark glanced around the crowded restaurant. Not here. Yes, here. I leaned forward. You've had me questioning my marriage, my entire life, for the past 24 hours. I deserve answers now. The secret phone had stopped ringing, but began again immediately. Mark sighed, reaching into his jacket pocket to silence it. As he did, I caught a glimpse of the caller ID, Jules Renard. Who? Is Jules Renard? I demanded. Is that who Jay is? Yes. Mark's expression was unreadable. Jules is a real estate agent, based in Bordeaux. Of all the answers I'd anticipated, this wasn't one of them. A real estate agent? You have a secret phone to talk to a real estate agent. It's complicated. Uncomplicate it, I hissed, aware. We were drawing curious glances from nearby tables. Mark signaled for the waiter. La déchance, s'il vous plaît. Then to me. I'll explain everything, but not here. Please, Claire, just give me 30 minutes. The walk back to our hotel passed. Intense silence. Paris continued its romantic ballet around us. Couples strolling hand in hand, musicians playing on street corners, the Eiffel Tower sparkling on the hour. But we moved through it all like ghosts, untouched by the magic. In our room, Mark went straight to the minibar, pouring himself a whiskey with hands that weren't quite steady. He offered me one. I declined. Start talking, I said, remaining standing while he sank into the armchair by the window. I wanted it to be perfect, he began, staring into his glass. The whole reveal. That's why Paris. Why all the romantic dinners and sightseeing. I wanted to create the perfect moment. Reveal what, exactly? He set down his drink and reached for his secret phone, unlocking it and handing it to me. Look through it, all of it. Then we'll talk. Warily, I took the phone. The messages with Jules showed more exchanges about the Stonehouse, renovation costs, legal documents. There were emails, too, formal correspondences in French with what appeared to be a bank, a property management company, various contractors, and photos, dozens of them. The same stone house with blue shutters from different angles, interior shots, showing renovation progress, a sweeping view of vineyards rolling toward a distant river, close-ups of gnarled grapevines heavy with fruit. I don't understand, I finally said, looking up at Mark. What is all this? It's our future. His voice was soft, uncertain. At least, I hoped it could be. Our future, I repeated, the words hollow. The house belonged to my grandfather's cousin. I barely knew about it until a law firm in Bordeaux contacted me last year. The cousin died, had no children. It passed to my grandfather, who passed years ago, then legally to my mother, who wanted nothing to do with French property complications. So it came to me. I sank onto the edge of the bed, trying to process this. You inherited a house in France, a year ago, and didn't tell me? At first, I was going to sell it immediately. That's why the second phone. I needed a French number. For all the legal and real estate communications. It seemed simpler than dealing with international charges. He ran a hand through his hair. But then I saw the property, the vineyard, the little village nearby. And I started to imagine a different life for us. His eyes met mine, suddenly vulnerable. Remember how we used to talk about living abroad someday? How you loved the idea of Lily being bilingual, experiencing different cultures? Those conversations felt like they belonged to different people now. Younger, more idealistic versions of ourselves, before mortgages and school. Districts and career ladders had narrowed our horizon to the comfortable suburban life we'd built. That was years ago, I said quietly. I know. But when this property fell into my lap, those old dreams came back. I started imagining us there, you writing, me taking on international clients remotely, Lily attending the village school. He gestured to the phone in my hands. Jules has been helping me understand what it would take to make the vineyard operational again, what renovations the house needs. I stared at him, this familiar stranger. You've been planning to uproot our entire life without telling me? No. He moved to sit beside me on the bed. I've been exploring if it's even possible, getting estimates, understanding the legal requirements. I wanted to have answers to all your questions before bringing it to you. Why all the secrecy? Why not just tell me from the beginning? His expression clouded. The morning after I found out about the inheritance, you got the news about your master's thesis being accepted. You were so excited about your academic future, talking about PhD programs you might apply for after graduation. It didn't seem like the right time to throw a French vineyard into the equation. So you decided to hide it from me for a year? My voice rose despite my effort to stay calm. Create a separate phone, a separate life? I wanted it to be a gift, not a burden, he said quietly. If I'd told you from the start, you'd have felt obligated to help with all the decisions, the research, on top of your thesis work and taking care of Lily when I was tied up with the Henderson case. It would have become another stress in your life. I stood up, needing distance. You don't get to decide what would stress me out. You don't get to edit what parts of your life you share with me. That's not how marriage works. You're right. He looked up at me, remorse evident in his eyes. I thought I was protecting you, giving you space to focus on your studies. But I see now I was wrong. I should have told you immediately. I paced, the small hotel room, mind racing. What was your plan for tomorrow night? What exactly were you going to propose? I was going to take you to dinner at the Eiffel Tower. I reserved the private dining space. His voice softened. I was going to show you everything. The photos, the renovation plans, the financial projections. And ask if you would consider spending a year there, as a family. A sabbatical of sorts. A year, I repeated, trying to wrap my mind around it. What about Lily's school? Your law practice? My potential PhD? All details I've been working through. The international school near the property has an excellent reputation. My firm would allow me to work remotely with occasional trips back to the States for important client meetings. And the University of Bordeaux has a PhD program that might align with your research interests. The thoroughness of his planning stunned me. While I'd been immersed in my thesis, Mark had been redesigning our entire future, with the best intentions, perhaps, but without my knowledge or input. I don't know what to say. I sank back onto the bed, suddenly exhausted. This is overwhelming. I know. He reached for my hand cautiously. And I'm sorry for the secrecy. I convinced myself it was the right approach, but clearly I was wrong. I stared at our joined hands, the familiar contours of his fingers wrapped around mine. 10 years of touch, of trust. Had I overreacted to the secret phone? Or was my anger justified, regardless of his benevolent intentions? I need time to process this, I finally said. It's not just about the house or even the secrecy. It's about you making major life decisions without me, thinking you know what's best for us without consulting me. Mark nodded slowly. I understand. Take all the time you need. As the Paris night deepened outside our window, I realized that what had begun as a romantic anniversary trip had become something else entirely. A crossroads where the past and future of our marriage hung in delicate balance. Dawn found me at the small desk by our hotel window, scrolling through renovation quotes and property tax documents on Mark's secret phone. He slept fitfully behind me, having drifted off sometime after 3 a.m. when our circular conversation finally exhausted itself. The stone house with blue shutters stared back at me from the screen. 5 bedrooms, original 18th century wine cellar, 2 hectares of vineyard. A property that had apparently been in my husband's family for generations, yet I'd never heard of it until last night. Outside, Paris was waking up. A delivery man wheeled fresh baguettes into the patisserie across the street. 2 street cleaners argued good-naturedly over a football match. My 3rd cup of hotel room coffee had gone cold beside me, untouched. How long have you been up? Mark's voice, rough with sleep. I didn't turn around. Couldn't sleep. The sheets rustled as he sat. Up. Did you look through everything? Yes. I finally faced him. His hair was rumpled, stubble darkening his jaw. He looked exhausted and uncertain, so different from the confident attorney who commanded courtrooms. The renovation costs alone are astronomical. The inheritance included some funds for that, and I've been putting aside money from my bonus each quarter. Another secret. I felt a fresh wave of betrayal. Our joint financial planning never accounted for that. I was going to reimburse our savings once you agreed to the plan. If you agreed. He ran a hand through his hair. I didn't want money to be the reason you said no. So instead of having an honest conversation with your wife about a potentially life-changing opportunity, you orchestrated this elaborate deception. My voice remained calm despite the storm inside me. Do you realize how patronizing that is? I didn't see it that way, he said quietly. I saw it as removing obstacles before presenting you with a choice. A choice you've already invested thousands of hours and dollars in. A choice with a clear right answer according to you. I stood, needing to move. What if I said absolutely not? What if I told you I have no interest in moving to France, living in a dilapidated vineyard house, or pulling Lily from her school and friends? His expression fell, but he recovered quickly. Then we don't go. I sell the property and we continue our life as planned. I meant what I said, Claire. This was meant to be an option, not an ultimatum. I wanted to believe him, but doubt had taken root. Last night you called it our future. Not a possibility or an option. Our future. Poor choice of words. He reached for his regular phone, checking the time. Would you like to cancel today's plans? Take some space? Today was supposed to be Versailles. The gardens, the Hall of Mirrors, a picnic lunch in the shadow of Marie Antoinette's playhouse. More perfect memories Mark had planned to cushion his revelation. No, I decided suddenly. Let's go to Versailles. But no more secrets. No more planning the perfect moment. just us, trying to find solid ground again. He nodded, relief visible in the loosening of his shoulders. I'd like that. We moved through our morning routine in careful choreography. The familiar dance of a long-married couple adjusted to accommodate the new distance between us. As I applied my makeup, I caught Mark watching me in the mirror. "What?" I asked. "I keep trying to see this from your perspective," he said, voice low. "Finding the phone, those cryptic messages. You must have thought that you were having an affair? Planning to leave me?" The possibility still lingered like a ghost between us, despite his explanation. "Yes, I did." He crossed the room, placing his hands gently on my shoulders. "I would never." I met his gaze in the mirror. "You did something almost as damaging, Mark. You created a separate life, one you kept me out of." His hands fell away. I didn't see it that way until now. The taxi to Versailles passed through rain-washed streets, the city gleaming like it had been polished just for us. Mark sat beside me, close enough that our shoulders occasionally brushed, yet a chasm stretched between us. "Tell me about the village," I said finally, breaking the silence. "The one near the vineyard." His expression brightened cautiously, like a man afraid to hope. "It's called Saint-Emilion, medieval, picturesque, limestone buildings, cobblestone, streets, famous for wine, of course." He hesitated. "There's a small literary society there. When I found out, I immediately thought of you." The thoughtfulness of that detail caught me off guard. Even in his deception, he'd been thinking of my happiness. "The primary school has only 30 students," he continued. "The teacher, Madame Fournier, has been there for 40 years. When I mentioned we have a daughter, she showed me their little library. They have books in 5 languages. I could picture it. Lily with a French accent, making friends with village children, learning about wine harvests and medieval history firsthand instead of from textbooks. The image was seductive. "And what would you do?" I asked. "You'd go stir-crazy without your cases, your courthouse drama." He smiled ruefully. "I've been speaking with a firm in Bordeaux that handles international business law. They're interested in having an American attorney with my background as a consultant. Part-time, flexible hours." The thoroughness of his research was both impressive and infuriating. He'd thought of everything, except including me in the process. Versailles stretched. Before us, golden and imposing under a bright spring sky. We joined the stream of tourists flowing toward the palace, Mark's hand occasionally touching the small of my back to guide me. A habit so ingrained, neither of us seemed conscious of it. Among the opulent rooms with their gilded moldings and crystal chandeliers, I found my mind drifting to that stone house with blue shutters. Would I hate living so far from everything familiar? Or would it be the adventure we'd dreamed of in our younger, less cautious days? "The Hall of Mirrors," Mark murmured as we entered the famous gallery. Hundreds of mirrors reflected the gardens outside, multiplying the light until it seemed we walked through pure brilliance. I caught our reflection, a handsome couple in their 30s, she in a sundress, he in linen trousers and a light sweater. We looked like any other tourists, gazing in wonder at the splendor of French history. No one watching would guess the seismic shift occurring in our marriage. "Did you know," Mark said, leaning close to be heard above the crowd, "that the Treaty of Versailles was signed in this room? Ending one era, beginning another. The parallel wasn't lost on me." "Is that what you're hoping for? An official end to our old life? Beginning a new one?" His expression turned serious. "I'm hoping for an honest conversation about what we both want for our future. Something I should have initiated a year ago." In the gardens, we found a quiet spot beneath a flowering chestnut tree. Mark spread the picnic blanket he'd packed that morning, setting out the bread, cheese, and fruit purchased from shops near our hotel. As we ate, the sun warm on our shoulders, I finally asked the question that had been circling my mind since his revelation. "Why the vineyard, Mark? Why this dramatic life change?" Is it really about reviving some childhood dream of living abroad? Or is there something else driving this? He set down his wine glass, considering. Do you remember the Henderson case? The one that took up most of last year? I nodded. His biggest case to date, a corporate merger worth billions. When it finally closed, there was this moment in the conference room. Everyone celebrating, popping champagne, and I felt nothing. His gaze fixed on something distant. I realized I'd missed Lily's science fair, your thesis presentation, even our anniversary dinner, all for this moment that left me completely empty. The admission hung between us, raw and honest. That same night, the email about the French property arrived. It felt like, I don't know, a sign? He laughed softly at himself. I know how that sounds, but suddenly there was this alternative path. A way to still practice law but on different terms. A chance for us to be present for Lily's childhood before it's gone. You could have just cut back your hours, I pointed out. Taken fewer cases. We've discussed that before. We both know how that goes in corporate law. Cutting back still means 60-hour weeks and missed dinners. He met my eyes directly. The vineyard represents a clean break, a complete reset of our priorities. His words resonated more than I wanted to admit. Hadn't I felt the same exhaustion with the constant striving, the packed schedules, the way we passed each other like ships in the night during busy periods? Hadn't I wondered if this was all there was? Professional success at the cost of genuine connection? I need to see it, I said suddenly. The house, the village. Before I can even consider such a massive change. Mark straightened, surprise and hope crossing his features. We could go tomorrow. It's only a few hours by train to Bordeaux, then a short drive to Saint-Emilion. Jules could meet us, show us everything. The eagerness in his voice gave me pause. I'm not saying yes to moving there. I'm saying I need more information before this conversation can continue meaningfully. Of course, he agreed quickly. Just a fact-finding trip, no pressure. As we packed up our picnic, I felt something shift. Between us, not a return to the easy trust we'd had before, but perhaps the first trembling step toward something new. The hurt of his deception remained, a bruise that would take time to heal. But beneath it, I glimpsed what had drawn us together in the first place. A shared willingness to imagine possibilities, to consider paths not taken. I'll contact Jules, Mark said as we walked back toward the palace, the afternoon sun casting long shadows across the manicured lawns. He can arrange everything for tomorrow. I nodded, watching a young family nearby, the father lifting a laughing toddler onto his shoulders, the mother capturing the moment on her phone. Would a simpler life in a French village give us more of those moments? Or was this entire vineyard fantasy just an elaborate escape from problems that would follow us regardless of where we lived? Mark, I said, stopping him with a hand on his arm. Whatever happens with this house, this potential move, we need to address the real issue. Which is? You didn't trust me enough to include me in something this important. I held his gaze steadily. That can never happen again, no matter where we live. His expression sobered. You're right. Never again. He took my hand, his grip firm and familiar. Partners in everything from now on, I promise. As we rejoined the crowd of tourists streaming toward the exit, I wondered if promises broken once could truly be mended, and whether the stone house, with blue shutters, represented our future, or merely a beautiful distraction from the cracks in our foundation that had allowed secrets to take root in the first place. The train to Bordeaux cut through the French countryside, a blur of emerald fields and terracotta rooftops. Mark sat beside me, occasional glances betraying his anxiety as I stared out the window, lost in thought. Last night, after returning from Versailles, we'd fallen into an exhausted sleep, separate, untouching, only to wake at dawn with the weighted anticipation of today's journey. This impromptu trip to see the vineyard had transformed our carefully planned anniversary vacation into something else entirely. A reconnaissance mission into a possible future neither of us had anticipated a week ago. "Jules will meet us at the Yai station," Mark said, breaking the silence. "He speaks excellent English, so don't worry about—" "My French is still decent," I interrupted. "I did minor in it, remember?" Mark nodded, chastened. "Of course. Sorry." Another small reminder of how much our relationship had changed in 48 hours. Before, he would have teased me about my rusty college French. Now, he walked on eggshells, afraid of causing further offense. "Tell me more about Jules," I said, softening my tone. "How did you connect with him?" "The law firm handling the inheritance recommended him. He specializes in historic properties and vineyard estates." Mark relaxed slightly, on safer ground. "He's been incredibly helpful navigating the Byzantine French property regulations. Some of the vineyard structures date back to the 1700s, which means special permits for any renovations. And the J in your messages, that's Jules Renard?" "Yes." He hesitated. "He's been pushing me to tell you everything for months." "That's what those messages were about." I raised an eyebrow. "Your real estate agent was giving you marriage advice?" A flush crept up Mark's neck. "He has a unique perspective on relationships. He and his wife nearly divorced over a similar situation. He inherited a property in Spain, tried to handle everything himself, kept her in the dark. She found out, almost left him." "Smart woman," I muttered. "They worked through it eventually. Now they split their time between Bordeaux and the Spanish coast." Mark glanced at me. He's been warning me I was making the same mistake, but I convinced myself our situation was different. The countryside outside was changing, more vineyards appearing, perfectly aligned rows of grapevines stretching toward distant limestone. Hills. My stomach tightened with nervous anticipation. Bordeaux station bustled with midday travelers. As we descended from the train, a tall man with salt and pepper hair and tortoiseshell glasses approached, recognition lighting his features. "Mark, mon ami." He clasped Mark's hand warmly, then turned to me with a respectful nod. "And you must be Claire. Finally, we meet. I am Jules." "Bonjour, Jules," I replied, studying the man who had been privy to my husband's secret life for nearly a year. "Enchanté." "Ah, your French is excellent," Jules exclaimed, then added with a conspiratorial wink. "Much better than your husband's." Despite myself, I smiled. Jules had a disarming warmth that made it difficult to maintain my guard. "The car is this way," he continued, leading us toward the parking area. "We will go directly to the property, yes? You must be eager to see it." The drive from Bordeaux to Saint-Emilion took us through the heart of wine country. Jules provided expert commentary on the various chateaux we passed, the different appellations, the unique terroir of each hillside. "The Romans planted the first vineyards here," he explained, gesturing toward ancient stone structures crumbling gracefully among newer buildings. "Your property, forgive me, the property you are considering, has similar history. The original press dates to the reign of Louis XIV. I caught Mark watching me in the rearview mirror, gauging my reaction. "It sounds like a museum piece," I said carefully. Jules laughed. "Many Americans think this way, but here we live with history. It is not behind glass, it is part of daily life." As we rounded a curve in the road, the medieval village of Saint-Emilion appeared on the horizon, a cluster of golden limestone buildings crowned by a towering church spire. It was, I had to admit, breathtaking. "First, a quick tour of the village," Jules announced. "Context is important." He parked near the market square where vendors sold fresh produce, cheeses, and of course wine. Elderly locals played pétanque in the dappled shade of plane trees. Children chased each other across ancient cobblestones that had witnessed centuries of similar scenes. "The village school," Jules pointed out as we passed a small stone building with bright blue doors. Only one classroom, but the education is excellent. Many families from Bordeaux try to enroll their children here. I thought of Lily. Her science projects spread across our kitchen table, her soccer team, her best friend living 3 doors down. Would she thrive in this picturesque setting, or resent being uprooted from everything familiar? Jules led us to a small cafe overlooking the vineyards. A quick coffee before we see the house, perhaps? The property is just beyond that tree line. He gestured toward a distant stand of cypress trees. Over espresso served in tiny porcelain cups, Jules shared more about the village community. The harvest festivals, the winter truffle hunts, the summer concerts in the ancient square. People here live differently, he explained, eyes crinkling at the corners. Work is important, yes, but so is enjoyment. A long lunch, a walk in the vineyards. These are not luxuries, but necessities. I could feel the seduction of it. This slower rhythm, this different relationship with time. Even Mark seemed more relaxed here, the perpetual tension in his shoulders easing as he leaned back in his chair, face tilted toward the sun. And now, Jules said, gathering his things, the moment of truth. Let us see if the house can work its magic on you as it did on your husband. We drove down a winding gravel road, vineyards stretching in neat rows on either side. Rounding a final bend, the stone house with blue shutters came into view. It sat on a gentle rise, 2 stories of golden limestone with a terracotta roof, surrounded by ancient oak trees. A wooden sign by the entrance read, Clos du Bois, the name of the vineyard. My breath caught despite my determination to remain objective. It was undeniably beautiful. Not in the manicured, perfect way of upscale American homes, but with the authentic charm of a place that had witnessed centuries of human life. It looks different than in the photos, I said, stepping from the car. The winter pruning is finished, and the first leaves are appearing on the vines, Jules explained. Each season transforms the landscape. Mark stood slightly apart, watching. Me nervously. This was the moment he'd been orchestrating for months, my first impression of the property he'd secretly hoped would become our home. Jules unlocked the massive front door, and we stepped into a wide entrance hall with terracotta, tiles, and exposed wooden beams. The renovation was clearly underway. Some walls freshly plastered, others still revealing ancient stone beneath crumbling layers. Modern lighting fixtures hung incongruously beside antique sconces. As you can see, there is work yet to be done, Jules acknowledged. But the essential structure is sound, and the updates to plumbing and electrical are complete. He led us through the ground floor, a spacious kitchen with new appliances nestled among original cabinets, a dining room dominated by a massive stone fireplace, a library with built-in bookshelves reaching to the ceiling. Each room opened through French doors onto terraces overlooking different aspects of the property. I trailed my fingers along a stone wall, feeling the cool roughness beneath my skin. How old is this part of the house? The central structure dates to 1732, Jules replied. The eastern wing was added in the early 1800s. Upstairs, 5 bedrooms branched off a central landing. The master suite featured a private balcony overlooking the vineyards, with the spire of Saint-Emilion's church visible in the distance. This would be our room, Mark said quietly, joining me on the balcony. If we decided to do this. I studied his face, the hopeful light in his eyes, the nervous set of his mouth. It's beautiful, Mark, all of it. I can see why you fell in love with the place. But? He prompted, hearing the unspoken reservation in my voice. But it's not. Just about a beautiful house or a picturesque village. It's about uprooting our entire life. Lily's life. I turned to face him fully. It's about whether we're running toward something meaningful or just running away from what isn't working. He nodded slowly. That's a fair question. Shall we see the wine cellar? Jules called from inside, either oblivious to or tactfully ignoring our moment of tension. The cellar was a cathedral-like space beneath the house, with vaulted stone ceilings and walls lined with wooden racks. Ancient equipment stood preserved in corners like museum pieces, while newer stainless steel tanks indicated recent wine production. The previous owner continued making small batches until his final years, Jules explained. The vineyard has excellent potential, though it would require investment to reach commercial production again. As Jules detailed the technical aspects of winemaking, I found myself picturing it: harvest time with the vines heavy with fruit, the cellar bustling with activity, perhaps Lily helping to sort grapes while Mark and I learned the ancient rhythms of vintners. The tour concluded in a stone pavilion overlooking the entire property. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the vineyards, gilding everything in warm light. Even in my conflicted state, I couldn't deny the beauty of this place. "I will give you some privacy," Jules said tactfully, retreating toward the main house. "Take your time. Consider not just what you might lose by coming here, but what you might find." When he had gone, Mark and I sat side by side on a stone bench, the weight of decision pressing around us. What would we even call ourselves? I asked finally. Vineyard owners? Winemakers? Expatriates living out some midlife crisis fantasy? Mark smiled faintly. Amateur vintners at best. Jules says it takes generations to truly understand winemaking. And your law career? All those years building your reputation, your client base? I'd keep a hand in the field through the Bordeaux firm. Different work, but still meaningful. He paused. What about you? Your writing? Your academic ambitions? I hadn't considered how this place might fit into my own professional future. I don't know. There's the University of Bordeaux, as you mentioned, and perhaps more time to work on that novel I've been postponing for years. Lily would learn French, experience a different culture. Remember how we always said we wanted to raise her with a global perspective? She'd also leave her friends, her school, everything familiar. I sighed, conflicted. She's at a vulnerable age, Mark. Children are resilient, more adaptable than adults often. He hesitated. We could try it for a year, keep our house in the States, approach it as a sabbatical. If it doesn't work, we return. The compromise was tempting, a way to explore this potential future without burning bridges to our past. When did you first know you wanted this? I asked suddenly. Not just the house, but this complete change? Mark considered the question carefully. Remember last Christmas? That power outage. During the blizzard? I nodded. For 3 days, we'd had no electricity, no internet, no connection to the outside world. We'd played board games by candlelight, read books aloud, cooked simple meals on our gas stove. That was the happiest I'd seen our family in years. Just being together, present with each other, not distracted by devices or deadlines. His voice softened with the memory. When I first saw this place, I thought, we could have that life permanently. Not the power outage, he added with a smile, but the simplicity, the connection. His words resonated uncomfortably with thoughts I'd had myself but never voiced. Concerns about our overscheduled lives, the way technology fragmented our attention, how weeks sometimes passed in a blur of commitments and obligations with little joy to show for it. Why didn't you just talk to me about these feelings? I asked, the central question that had haunted me since discovering his secret. Why the elaborate deception? Mark was quiet for a long moment. I think I was afraid you wouldn't take it seriously if it was just an abstract conversation. That you'd see it as a passing phase, something to be managed rather than embraced. He met my eyes directly. I wanted to show you a concrete alternative, not just talk about one. So you orchestrated all this, the secret planning, the anniversary, trip to Paris, the dramatic revelation, to manipulate me into your vision? He flinched at my harsh phrasing. To inspire you to consider a possibility you might otherwise dismiss. But you're right, it was manipulative. And I see that now. The sun was beginning to set. casting the vineyards in golden light. In the distance, the church bells of Saint-Emilion rang, marking the hour. Time passing, decisions waiting. "I need to ask you something," I said finally. "And I need complete honesty." Mark nodded solemnly. "Anything." "If I say no to this, if after seeing everything, I decide I can't uproot our life for this vineyard dream, what happens to us?" The question hung between us, weighted with all our unspoken fears. Would my rejection of this dream create a rift too wide to bridge? Had Mark invested so much of himself in this vision that he couldn't return to our old life satisfied? "Then, we go home," he said simply. "Together. And find new ways to bring more meaning, more connection into the life we already have." He took my hand, his grip warm and familiar. "The house isn't what matters, Claire. It never was. It's just a container for the life I want with you and Lily. If that life has to take shape somewhere else, in some other way, so be it." I studied his face, searching for any hint of reservation or hidden agenda. Finding none, I felt a knot loosen in my chest. Not forgiveness exactly, not yet, but perhaps the beginning of understanding. "I need time," I said. "Not just today, but real time to consider everything. To talk with Lily, research schools, understand what my professional options would be here." Hope flickered across his features. "Does that mean you're considering it? Truly?" "It means I'm not dismissing it outright. It means I recognize there's something valuable in what you found here, even if your method of sharing it was deeply flawed." I squeezed his hand once before releasing it. "It means I'm willing to explore the possibility, together as equal partners, before making any decision." As the shadows lengthened across the ancient vineyard, the weight of secrets between us began to lift. Whatever choice we ultimately made about Clos du Bois, we would make it together, with clear eyes and open hearts. The path forward was uncertain, but for the first time since discovering Mark's secret phone, I felt the ground beneath us begin to stabilize. In the distance, Jules emerged from the house, a bottle of wine and 3 glasses in hand. "A taste of what this land produces," he called, "to help with your contemplation." Mark looked at me questioningly. "Shall we?" I nodded, rising from the stone bench. "Yes. Let's see what this place has to offer." Together, we walked toward Jules and whatever future awaited us, in this golden vineyard or elsewhere, our steps once again in rhythm, even as the final decision remained unmade. We returned to Paris in twilight, the city's lights beginning their nightly dance as our train glided into Gare de Lyon. The day at Clos du Bois had left me in a strange liminal space, enchanted by possibilities yet still raw from betrayal, simultaneously, drawn to and wary of the future Mark had envisioned without me. The bottle of wine Jules had pressed into our hands, from your vines, the 2018 vintage, rested in Mark's messenger bag. We'd promised to open it on our last night in Paris, as if the taste might somehow clarify our path forward. "Room service tonight?" Mark asked as we entered our hotel. "Or would you prefer to go out?" "Room service," I decided. The weight of the day, the emotional excavation of our marriage, had left me craving privacy. While Mark ordered dinner, I stepped onto our small balcony. Paris sparkled below, couples strolling along the Seine, cafe terraces buzzing with evening energy. How quickly everything had changed. 4 days ago, I'd arrived expecting a romantic anniversary celebration. Now I stood contemplating uprooting our entire existence for a stone house among French vineyards. My phone chimed with a video call. Lily. I'd been texting her throughout our trip, sending photos of tourist sites, but hadn't mentioned the vineyard or the fracture in her parents' marriage. Some conversations needed to happen in person. "Mom!" Her face filled the screen, freckles more pronounced from spring soccer practice. "Did you see the Eiffel Tower sparkle? Did Dad take you to that fancy restaurant he's been researching for like months? My chest tightened. Of course Mark had. Been planning this trip obsessively. Not just as romantic cover for his revelation, but because that's who he was. Detail-oriented. Thoughtful. Except when it came to including me in life-altering decisions. Yes to both, I smiled, shifting to include the Paris cityscape behind me. How's everything with Grandma and Grandpa? Good. Grandpa's teaching me poker, but don't worry. We're just using pretzels, not real money. She leaned closer to the camera. Are you having the best time? Dad seemed super nervous before you guys left. It's been surprising, I admitted. In good ways and challenging ones. Her perceptive gaze narrowed. Are you guys fighting? Not fighting exactly, just having some important conversations about the future? About me going to college? Because that's still years away, Mom. I laughed, genuinely this time. No, not about college. But speaking of your future. I hesitated, unsure how much to share without Mark present. What would you think about spending more time in France? Not just vacation, but living there? Her eyes widened. Like, moving there? For real? It's just an idea we're discussing. Nothing decided. Is this about that house Dad's been secretly working on? The one in the wine place? The question struck me like a physical blow. You know about the house? She rolled her eyes in that distinctly preteen way. Dad's not exactly spy material, Mom. I saw the renovation pictures on his laptop when he fell asleep on the couch last month, and he's been listening to those learn French while you sleep things. I struggled to process this revelation. Why didn't you say anything? I figured he was planning some big surprise. She shrugged. Is it cool, the house? Mark appeared at my shoulder, registering Lily's face on the screen. Hey, Squirt, he greeted her, then noticed my stunned expression. What did I miss? She knows about the house, I said flatly. Apparently your secret-keeping skills need work. To my surprise, Lily jumped to his defense. I wasn't supposed to know, Dad. Sorry for snooping. No, I'm sorry for not being upfront with both of you. Mark took the phone gently from my hand. Lily, we visited the property today. It's a possibility. A big change we're considering as a family. But we'd never make that decision without talking to you first. Would I have to learn French? Yes, but you'd pick it up quickly. Would we still come back to visit? Because Emma would literally die if I moved away forever. We'd definitely visit, and Emma could come stay with us during summer breaks. Their easy exchange, the practical concerns, the matter-of-fact discussion, threw my own emotional turmoil into sharp relief. Had I overreacted to Mark's secrecy? Or was Lily simply processing this potential change with the adaptability of youth? After finishing the call with promises to bring her French candy, Mark handed the phone back to me. I had no idea she knew. Apparently, we're both guilty of keeping secrets in this marriage, I said dryly. Our room service arrived. Coq au vin, crusty baguette, a bottle of Bordeaux that would now serve as a prelude to Jules's special vintage. We ate in companionable silence at the small table by the window, Paris providing a cinematic backdrop. I keep thinking about what you said at the vineyard, Mark finally ventured. About whether we're running toward something meaningful or just away from what isn't working. He refilled our wine glasses. It's been keeping me up at night. And? I prompted, and I think the answer is both. He met my gaze. I am running away, in some sense, from the constant pressure, the disconnection, the feeling that we're living, beside each other rather than with each other. But I'm also running towards something I believe could be extraordinary. His candor disarmed me. Do you remember our first apartment? That tiny place with the leaky faucet and the noisy radiator? Of course. Your study desk barely fit in the bedroom. We were so happy there, I said softly. Not because it was perfect, but because we faced everything together. The The broken appliances, the midnight fire alarm, that bizarre neighbor with the puppet collection. Mark smiled at the memory. Mr. Fendelman and his ventriloquist practice at 5 a.m. My point is, we were partners then in everything. Somewhere along the way, we stopped facing things together. You took on your burdens alone. I did the same with mine. When did that happen? He wondered. I considered the question carefully. Gradually, I suppose, after Lily was born. When your firm made you partner. When I started my master's program. Little moments of separation that became a habit. He nodded slowly. And my handling of the vineyard inheritance was just the most extreme version of that pattern. Exactly. We lapsed into silence, the weight of recognition settling between us. It wasn't just about the secret phone or the hidden property. It was about the drift that had occurred so gradually we hadn't noticed until we were standing on separate shores. I have something to show you, I said suddenly, retrieving my laptop. I've been working on this since we got back from Saint-Emilion yesterday. I opened a document titled Vineyard Decision Matrix, a detailed spreadsheet analyzing every aspect of the potential move, financial implications, educational options for Lily, professional opportunities for both of us, immigration requirements, healthcare considerations, even cultural adjustment factors. Mark studied it, surprise evident. In his expression, this is incredibly thorough. It's what I do when I'm processing. You plan grand romantic gestures. I make spreadsheets. I pointed to the final section. These are my questions, the things we'd need to resolve before making a decision. He scrolled through them carefully. All valid concerns. But the fact that you created this at all means I'm seriously considering it, I confirmed. Not because the vineyard is some magical solution to our problems, but because the issues that led you to consider such a dramatic change resonate with me too. His eyes met mine, hope kindling. Really? The constant striving for more success, more achievements, more stuff, without asking why or what it costs us. The way technology fragments our attention. The sense that we're teaching Lily to value productivity over presence. I gestured to the spreadsheet. According to my highly scientific analysis, these problems exist whether we're in our current home or a French vineyard. But you think the vineyard might offer a different approach? Maybe. A reset, as you called it. A chance to intentionally build a life around what we actually value, not what we've unconsciously drifted into. Mark reached for Jules's wine bottle, examining the handwritten label. Shall we open this? It seems appropriate. As he worked the corkscrew, I continued my train of thought. But the vineyard itself isn't the solution, Mark. It's just a potential container for the changes we need to make anyway. He poured 2 glasses of the ruby liquid. I agree. And if we decide against it, we'll find other ways to create that change. We touched glasses, the crystal producing a clear, bright note. The wine was earthy and complex, with notes of blackberry. And something mineral. The limestone soil of Saint-Emilion transformed into taste. It's good, I said, surprised. Different from what we usually drink, but good. Like everything worthwhile? An acquired taste? Mark set down his glass. I owe you an apology, Claire. Not just for keeping the inheritance secret, but for making unilateral decisions about our future. For assuming I knew what was best without consulting you. That stops now. And I need to ask myself why you felt you couldn't share this with me from the beginning, I acknowledged. Whether I've become so focused on maintaining our stable life that I've stopped being open to new possibilities. We talked long into the night, the lights of Paris fading as the city slept around us. Not just about the vineyard, but about all. The accumulated debris that had settled between us over a decade of marriage. Resentments never voiced, dreams deferred, compromises that had calcified into resignation. By the time dawn painted the sky in watercolor hues, We had reached not so much a decision as a truce, with each other and with the uncertainty of our future. "So where does this leave us?" Mark asked, stifling a yawn as he stretched beside me on the balcony where we'd migrated to watch the sunrise. "With a lot more conversations ahead," I said, leaning against his shoulder. "With Lily, with our employers, with financial advisors. But conversations we'll have together, as a team. And the vineyard? We'll visit again, all three of us this summer. Spend 2 weeks living in the house, exploring the village, meeting people. A proper fact-finding mission before any decision." He nodded, relief evident in the loosening of his shoulders. "That sounds perfect." "And in the meantime," I continued, "we start making changes at home, reclaiming our weekends, having device-free evenings, being more intentional about how we spend our time and attention. Small experiments in living differently," he agreed. "Exactly. Because whether we end up making wine in France or staying in our current home, what matters is that we choose our path together. Eyes open, fully aware of what we're gaining and what we're giving up." As the morning light bathed Paris in gold, I felt something settle in my chest, not forgiveness exactly, not yet, but perspective. Mark's secret phone had revealed not just a hidden property, but the fault lines in our marriage, the ways we'd stopped truly seeing each other. Perhaps that revelation, painful as it had been, was the true anniversary gift, a chance to rebuild what had begun to crumble beneath the surface of our seemingly perfect life. Later that day, our last in Paris, we wandered through Montmartre again. The same steep streets, the same white dome of Sacré-Cœur against the blue sky. But everything felt different. Where tension had vibrated between us before, a tentative peace now existed. Fragile, but real. "Remember when I asked you to make a wish in the cathedral?" Mark said as we passed a street artist sketching a young couple. I nodded. I wished for the truth. "And did you get it?" "A more complicated version than I expected," I admitted. "But yes, the important question is, what do we do with it now?" He took my hand, his grip warm and familiar. "We build something honest. Together. Whatever shape that takes." As we descended the steps back toward the heart of Paris, I felt the weight of secrets lifting. The decision about the vineyard still loomed ahead, complex, life-altering. But the secrecy that had poisoned, the choice was gone. Whatever path we chose now, we would walk it side by side, facing both its challenges and its joys as we once had, in that tiny first apartment where we'd become a team. Our anniversary trip had transformed from the romantic celebration Mark had planned into something more profound. Not a reaffirmation of vows already spoken, but the beginning of a new covenant between us. One built not on grand gestures or perfect moments, but on the harder, messier work of genuine partnership. Paris had not been at all what I expected. Instead of champagne and candlelight confirming what I thought I knew, it had offered something far more valuable: the discomfort of truth, the vulnerability of starting again, and the quiet hope that comes from choosing love, not despite knowing someone's flaws, but because of knowing them fully and being known in return. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.